podcast!
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a podcast?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and
Podcast.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
All right, in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome everyone to Get to the Podcast. That's Get to the Podcast with the number 2. I'm Tiago D'Souza.
I'm Nick Gambino.
And I'm Neil Carson.
And Nick, I feel like we have the power today.
Oh, why's that?
I don't know. You tell me.
All right. Well, we actually have, it's an interview. It's an interview episode.
What?
We love these ones. We have a really special guest today. Our guest today needs no introduction, but this is a podcast after all, so we're going to do one anyway. Not only did he direct one of our favorite 80s movies, Masters of the Universe, but he also either wrote or directed some of our favorite theme park rides, including Jurassic Park The Ride, Terminator 2 3D, Battle Across Time, and Poseidon's Fury, Escape from the Lost City. All of those are at the Universal theme parks. With a career that spans decades, he's built an impressive resume working on TV, movies, and even theater. Please welcome to the show, Gary Goddard.
Woo!
Hello.
Woo! Hey.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you very much for coming on. Well, like I said, we've been fan of Masters of the Universe for years. I mean, we each found it when we were kids.
Yeah.
We're all 80s kids, so it's kind of like perfect timing. And Neil,
I saw it in the theaters and actually in Philadelphia back in 1987. It was like 6 years old. I saw that movie and it like imprinted like this permanent,
Neil literally lives like by the philosophies in that film. He will be talking about something on a moral issue, and he'll just be quoting that film. I'm like, are you quoting Masters of the Universe again?
Yeah,
he literally lives his life
It's
according to that.
Well, then he's had a good journey for his life.
Yes, good journey.
I brought that up. Yeah,
He will say
journey.
goodbye sometimes just by saying good journey.
I don't
I'm
say
like,
goodbye to people. I say good journey.
Good journey. So Gary, we wanted to talk a little bit about Masters of the Universe, but we wanted to first kind of start a little bit earlier with how you kind of got into the entertainment industry. I believe you started working with Disney in the beginning.
Yeah, I was doing theater when I was younger and making my own movies in high school and, all the traditional things. I think when I was younger, at one point I wanted to be a ventriloquist and then a magician and then I want to be an actor. I started writing and directing my own musicals in high school and producing them, getting my friends to be in them and everything, and was doing all that. And then California Institute of the Arts came along, which was the school that Walt Disney had left a sizable part of his estate to when he died to create this community of the artists, which was this university. And I wound up auditioning for that in my final year of high school and was accepted. That first year, only 600 kids were accepted around the world.
Wow.
And but I'd always been a fan of Disney anyway. And make a long story short, by the time I finished school, yes, they offered me a position they flew me out to the brand new Walt Disney World. And I think it'd been open, a couple of years. And they flew me out there to direct a musical theater workshop production of a show called Hoop-de-Doo, the Wild West Dinner Review. And it was a dinner review. It was a separate ticket. It was going to be in Fort Wilderness at Pioneer Hall across the lagoon from the Magic Kingdom. And it was only supposed to run that summer. It is still running today, 3 shows a night, 7 days a week, and very successful. Now I think I can't remember. It's a dinner and show. So it's like, I think now the tickets are like, I don't know, $100 for adults and $40 or $50 for kids or something.
Wow.
Pretty much sold out all the time, hard to get into. And anyway, that was my first gig right out of college. I was it was kind of cool because I got this job about 4 weeks before graduation. So I knew I was going to graduate and 2 weeks later be in Florida. But the story started earlier because I had been a fan of the 9 Old Men. I made my mom. Yeah, I came from a lower middle class family. I think it was $7. That was a lot of money. We were at Disneyland one day, and the Art of Animation book, the original one, was there, and I really wanted it. And I read that thing inside and out 10 times. And I knew all the 9 Old Men, what their names were. And at one point, I read an article later when I was in high school. But I know I couldn't drive yet because I had to have my mom drive me there. But anyway, I read in an article that Les Clark, one of the 9 old men that, I don't know if you remember the 9 old men.
Yeah,
Walt
the original
Disney
artist or
Yeah, so Les worked with Freddie Moore. Les worked on a lot of the early Mickey stuff. Les Clark did, and The Sorcerer's Apprentice with Freddie Moore. And anyway, so I read this interview with him in some newspaper or magazine, and he mentioned that he had a second home in Santa Barbara, which is where I live. Well, I went right to the white pages, in the days of the telephone books, and there was Mr. and Mrs. Les Clark, and so I called them up on my dial telephone at the house, and the phone was, hello, Clark residence. Is this the home of Les Clark? Yes, it is. May I help you? Yeah, is this the Les Clark that works for Disney? Yes. May I help you? I was just wondering if I could speak to him. Les, it's for you.
Wow.
So, Les Clark gets on the phone, and I tell him I'm a fan. I didn't even know what I was going to say. When you're young, you're just like, I'm on the phone. I'm going to see if I can, talk to him. And I just told him I was a big fan. I knew which scenes he'd worked on. I'd read the book. And he goes, oh, well, you should come visit me, and I'll give you a tour of the studio. And So my mom wouldn't drive on freeways, and my dad worked all the time. So ultimately, my high school theater teacher agreed to drive me down to the studio. And that was my first studio tour. And from then, I kept relationships up. I met Frank Thomas that day, and I met Milt Kahl. And I met, basically all of the 9 old men, plus Ken Anderson and Claude Coates and a whole bunch of other people.
Wow.
So I stayed a fan, and I would call them up, especially when I went to Cal Arts then, since I was a Cal Arts student, since Walt funded that studio. Anytime I wanted to go to the studio, they would give me a pass, and I'd go there. And it got to the point where I knew the guards, I knew everybody. I could kind of come and go from the studio, and it was cool. And they would always make time for me. I'd go knock on the door of Frank Thomas or Ollie Johnson or Eric Larson, and they go, oh, Gary, come in. It was a very, very casual family atmosphere at the studio in those days. And so the only one I'd never met was Mark Davis, because by that time he'd already moved over to Imagineering. And hold on, the radio just went on, because that was the alarm. By the way, for your fans, I got up very early for this phone call here in California.
Which we appreciate.
We totally appreciate
on a
it, yes.
Sunday morning. You said to me, you were like, you originally thought it was going to be 6 a.m. and you were like, you ask much. And I was like, I know I do. And I really apologize.
Thank you so much.
So anyway, I finally I got to meet Mark, and he gave me my first tour of Imagineering while I was still a student at Cal Arts. And I met Herb Ryman, and I met basically a dozen of the Disney legends on the Imagineering side that were over there. And I stayed in touch with Mark Davis all those years, and went over several other times to Imagineering. And when I went off to work for Disney at Hoop to Do, I let Mark and all the guys at Disney know that I'd been engaged by Disney. I was moving to Florida to do this show for the summer. And I wound up staying on there. And then I got a little bored. I did a number of other things besides directing that show. Once the show stayed on, I stayed on for a while. Then I went over, they asked me to restage some of the Polynesian luau. So I went over and did that and ran that for a while. And did a few grad nights, all-nighters, stage managing some of the different acts that were coming in. It was actually kind of cool for someone straight out of college. This was a real, a smorgasbord of great opportunities.
Right.
And Disney World had only been open, I think, a few years, so it wasn't so highly organized. There was, it was still organized. Don't get me wrong, but you could really move a lot, go backstage a lot, go where you wanted to go. It was very cool. But I soon tired of that, because I really wanted to be a director and do stage and film. So I gave my notice. When I gave my notice, I had already accrued like 2 weeks of vacation. I went up to New York to kind of scout a place to move, and I was going to go up there and do theater. But when I got back, there was a phone call waiting for me from Imagineering, because Mark Davis had heard that I was quitting, and Mark thought I should stay with the company. So they flew me out for an interview at Imagineering. And it was great. I met in a room with John Hench and Mark Davis and Marty Sklar, and they interviewed me for about 20 or 30 minutes, asked me what I'd done, and they talked about Hoop to Do, the show that I'd done, and these things I'd done before that, and essentially offered me a job. So go upstairs and work it out with Orlando Ferranti was his name. He handled all the business stuff, and I did. So they said, when can you be here? So I got to go back to Florida and then drive my car back. So I said, okay. And I said, I guess I could be here in a week. And they said, okay, we'll see you on Monday.
Wow.
And that was that. And that's how I started at Imagineering. And that kind of set me off into that path.
Right.
But I met a guy there, Claudio Mazzoli, who was an illustrator from Italy. And we together created a film project called Against the Gods, which was basically the 10 Commandments in space.
Wow.
And we sold that to Paramount Pictures. We sold the screenplay and the concept. And we did that through John DeCure Sr., who had made the introduction. John DeCure was a production designer on movies like Cleopatra and The Agate and the Ecstasy and The King and I. And I mean, he was amazing. More recently, he did the first Ghostbusters movie. He also did Hello Dolly and was famous for almost bankrupting the studio with the sets for Hello Dolly.
Wow.
Well, for Hello Dolly, he actually built the sets over the administration buildings.
Are you serious?
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was still wanting to get into films and everything. So, but I had a pretty good Disney from my interest in Disney originally to Disney World and then to Imagineering was a good journeyman's journey to really be involved in a wide number of different kinds of entertainment experiences, attractions, all that kind of thing.
Right. Wow. Okay. So you were in Imagineering, right? So I guess you were an Imagineer. Like that's kind of what you.
That's right.
That's amazing. Just to be able to put that on.
It's just incredible.
Be like, yeah, I was one of those. So moving forward. So this was in the 70s, right?
Yes, the late 70s.
Late 70s, okay. And then late 70s. Sorry. Yes, late 70s. And then if you get into the 80s at this point, I know in terms of at least IMDb, your first feature film that you had a writing credit on was Tarzan the Ape Man.
The Ape Man.
Right,
yeah.
which is a John Derek film. Bo Derek was in it.
Yes.
So,
I was at Paramount Studios working on Against the Gods, that screenplay I just mentioned.
Yeah.
And there I ran into Maxine Goldenson, who was the daughter of Leonard Goldenson, the founder of ABC.
Okay.
And she had an office there in a studio, and she was working on a different project, but she had acquired the rights from Marvel. This is a funny story. To a new comic book that Marvel had, but all they had was a title. They had no story yet, Dazzler, and they didn't have a story for it yet.
Dazzler,
And
I remember Dazzler.
Yeah, so they thought the idea of a Bo Derek doing a movie called Dazzler would be good.
Oh, okay, I can see that.
So I started working, and Maxine had a relationship with Bo and John Derek. She had just become the biggest star in the world, of course, because of 10. And so she had a deal to develop something around them with Dazzler, and John was intrigued by it, but no one knew what the story was. So Maxine was like, can you come up with a story? So I did, but I didn't do the obvious thing. I didn't create a superhero story. I created a kind of a dystopian future, and power was gone, things like that. Kind of a Mad Max kind of, but in what was America, probably.
Okay.
But Dazzler was a sword, much like Excalibur, and someone was to wield it. And she was a young girl being raised by her older father, who ultimately would be the one to hold Dazzler and to lead the people against the evil tyrants and blah, blah, blah. So it was a kind of a Arthurian story, but with a female in the lead, a Joan of Arc kind of element to it. And she loved it. John and Bo loved it. And suddenly I'm going to write this picture for Paramount. But they had already done their deal with MGM to do the next Tarzan movie. And in fairness to John, he had a great concept. The movie he wanted to do was called Me, Jane. And it was the Tarzan story from the Jane perspective. And no one had really done that. No one had yet done these kind of takeoffs like Wicked and like all these other things now where they take the other view of the story,
right,
the view that you may not have been considered. But when we got right down into it, when he got into it, MGM, the only rights they had was to do a remake of Tarzan the Ape Man. So John said, we really like the writing you're doing. We're doing this Tarzan thing. We'd like you to do a dialogue polish on this because we're not happy with the dialogue. And I said, great. Because actually the Dazzler thing was spec. I was just working with them trying to get to the point where they'd engage me as a writer. But I was already in the Writers Guild because of my Paramount previous stuff there. So suddenly it's a paid gig. Do a dialogue polish. That's a paid gig on a Go movie, for Tarzan. So I'm like, and plus I had read all the Tarzan books and all the John Carter books. I was in Edgar Rice Burroughs. I'd read all those books when I was a kid. So I was like, this is going to be cool. Of course, I didn't know all the restrictions at the time that were going to be on it, and because since they could only do a remake, but John wanted to tell it from Jane's perspective. The trick was, how do you do a remake of that script? You can make changes, you can update it for culture and stuff, but essentially you have to stick to the basic outline of the original screenplay that it's based on. So but I didn't know that when I signed on, and I got 75% through the dialogue polish, and then John said, we love your writing, we don't like what it's based on, we want you to do a complete page 1 rewrite working with me, meaning John. And we're flying to the Seychelles Islands on Friday, I think it was a Tuesday, to scout locations, and we want you to go with us, and we'll do the writing there. And I said, okay, I was whatever, 23 or 24. Yeah, let's do it. So let's go.
Right.
So off we went. And that's how I wound up writing Tarzan the Ape Man. And that led to me getting engaged with the CAA Agency, Creative Artists Agency, because that's where Bo was. And I met Martin Baum, who kind of set up their whole film department. He's the one who signed me. And that's kind of how things started. And from there, Masters of the Universe and the Captain Power television show and a bunch of other things happened while I was actually, I just founded my company. I left Imagineering in 79, done some consulting for them. They brought me back in 78, 79. I left in 77, I think. And then they brought me back in 78, 79 to do some consulting. And in 1980, I left and formed my company. And in 1981, this whole Tarzan thing happened, and that led to Masters of the Universe in whatever it was, 1986 or something.
Right. 87 it came out, but I guess you were working on it in 86. Okay, good. So that was kind of your foray into film, like theatrical film, kicking the door in was with Tarzan. Now, was there any projects you were working on film-wise between Tarzan and Masters of the Universe, or was it pretty much Masters of the Universe was the next one in regards to film?
Yeah, I had an idea for a story called Children of Merlin when I was working at Florida. So that was before all this. And that was everything to me was all about trying to get the experience down to do this picture, which I'd written and which I would direct. And I did get a deal at CBS Theatrical Films where they allowed me to develop the script, and I wrote the script, 2 drafts, while I was writing a new movie for John Derek, Pirate Annie. It was going to be a pirate movie based on the life of Anne Bonny, and Bo was going to be, Pirate Annie.
Okay.
And I should say based loosely on the life of Anne Bonny.
Okay. One of those.
It kind of has something to do with it. Well, actually, we just took her name, and it's a totally different story. But anyway,
okay.
All
right.
And so Children of Merlin was really my passion. And this was long before Harry Potter, but it was basically about the story involved the fact that Excalibur, when it disappeared to be hidden from the powers of darkness. And the time we know as the Dark Ages is descended when Excalibur disappeared. And what happened to it over the centuries is it was basically secreted to the New World and kept here away from the eyes of the dark. And this is all revealed in a dream, in a feverish dream that a kid has, and he wakes up in present day America, and he suddenly has this sense, kind of Close Encounters, like that he has to be at a certain place, and he gets to that place, and that place is actually called Mystery Hill. Okay. Mystery Hill is a real place in America that is called the American Stonehenge because it's clear proof that Celts were here before, the Celtic people were here before the Indians, because there's traces of Celtic things all along the eastern coast. This one is outside of Boston.
Oh, wow.
And there's a great moment where he's trying to find this place, Secret Hill, and he gets into the Boston area, and he goes, I'm trying to find a place called Secret Hill. He goes, oh, yeah, you just follow the signs, get in the freeway, go down there, because there's actually signs there, Mystery Hill exit. It's a tourist attraction now,
Right.
Anyway, they form the Circle of Light. They basically bring back, they don't bring him back to life, but Merlin appears to these kids who are the embodiment of Lancelot.
The Knights in the Round Table.
Yeah, Galahad and Helena, who was an enchantress, and basically they're charged with finding Excalibur, bringing that back to the world to fight off the powers of darkness. The powers of darkness have been slowly, generating their powers, waiting for the light to make their move to reappear. And basically this is that moment in time. It's contemporary. So we move the final battle between light and dark from the Dark Ages to now. And with the with the idea that the powers of the light moved it till now because to give them time to regenerate their powers and stuff.
That's actually a really cool concept. I love the modern contemporary, America kind of setting
King
for that.
Arthur
That actually sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so I still hope to do that, basically, even though Harry Potter and a lot of movies has danced around it. No one's actually hit this particular approach to it.
Right.
But you can imagine when Harry Potter came out, I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool.
Right.
All I heard back then is, you can't make a movie with kids. No one's going to go see it if there's kids in it. And I'm like,
Come on, it's the Goonies meets.
God.
Yeah, it's the Goonies meets King Arthur and Merlin meets Monster Squad and all that. It would have worked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was working on that, and I was working on a couple other projects that were ones that I wanted to do myself, and then Masters came along, and so I did that, and then I had to leave my company to go do it. But when I came back, my company was not in the shape it was when I left, so I had to kind of leave filmmaking and get back to that. And my thought was, I'll go get my company, get it back together next year or so, and then I'll make my next movie. But when you make those decisions, it never kind of works out that way.
Yeah.
So the company thing kind of took over, and we were doing projects in Japan. We're doing all around the world, and I kept thinking, well, another year, and then I'll get back to pictures and stuff.
Right.
But these large theme park and resort projects and things tend to overwhelm you for a period of 3 or 4 years. These aren't 1-year projects.
It's a bigger project than movies, even, it seems. I mean, like the concept behind these things, they have to last 20 some odd years, 25 years.
And even longer. The two projects in resort, the two resorts in Macau, Galaxy Macau is a $3.6 billion, 3,000 room, basically city unto itself. We opened that in May of 2011 and got a call 5 days later to do a project for Melco Crown. And we wound up engaging to do that one right away. And that was a $3.4 billion, 2,800 room,
right.
Yeah. So those things they take up years,
So it seems like that's your calling, but you've been trying to do the film thing, but like you're calling in like what you're phenomenal at is these rides and these theme attractions and so on. Like you've cemented your brand into some of even my favorite rides at Universal.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably true. If you look at Spider-Man and T23 and these things that I've done, it would take someone who's done theater, film, 3D, rides. You kind of have to understand all of those disciplines to create those kind of attractions that have never been done before, which kind of merged and melded all these different technologies and ways of storytelling into one experience.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to go back a little bit to Masters of the Universe.
Sure.
So how did that actually come about? Like, how did you get attached to that film? I know it was Canon Films, which is a crazy story unto itself.
Well, it started out, it was going to be a Warner Brothers film, actually.
Really?
So Ed Pressman, whose family was in the toy business, Pressman Toys, but Ed had wanted to produce films and had his own film company and was doing films at the time, working with Oliver Stone and with all kind of people. And he saw the potential of Masters of the Universe while it was still rising, and he got the rights, but he wasn't able to get a deal together until the thing was, pretty far along. When I came into it, he had a script by David Odell, and he'd already signed Dolph Lundgren to do the picture, but he hadn't got it at a studio yet. But he wouldn't, to get a movie going, you basically need to have a script, you need to have a director, and ideally you need to have a star, and then you take that package out to a studio and you try and get someone to pick it up.
Right.
So he had his star, and he had his, and I don't remember who, but someone said Ed Pressman was looking for director for Masters of the Universe for this He-Man movie. Well, among other things, our company, we were a small company then. We were about 12 people, half of which came from Disney, guys I knew from Imagineering and stuff, character designers and animators and artists and stuff.
Crazy.
So we had got into a little sideline business creating characters for the toy business. So we had the Snugglebums through Milton Bradley, and Milton Bradley had Candyland, and they came to us with Candyland and said, look, we want to add characters to Candyland. So we added the characters to Candyland. Basically, probably the game you played with King Candy and Princess Lolly and Queen Frostine. I created all those characters.
What? You're changing my whole history right now. You're changing my history.
You had a hand in my whole childhood. Like, it's like Master of the Universe, Candyland, Universal rides.
Yeah, one of those little known facts. But the game has been around since I was a kid. I played Candyland with my grandmother when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And they call Candyland the first a child's first game because there's no numbers and there's no reading. You play by colors. You
that's
pick
true.
up red and you move ahead red, or you move ahead blue. So they had the game for a long time, but they had the lands. All the lands were there. They didn't have the castle. It was Home Sweet Home on the original board, and there was no licorice forest, but there was the peanut brittle house and the ice cream sea and the gumdrop mountains. So we created characters for each of those worlds, which is a funny story, by the way. We created the characters. We did our own version of the characters, and they send us back by their board game people our characters with no lands. They've replaced the lands, and I called them up and went, No. These characters were designed to go with those lands. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I said, well, for a kid's fantasy, they want to go on the Gumdrop Mountains, but they're going to meet the Gumdrop Mountain greeter now.
Right. That's literally like what inspired Candy Crush today. Like if you have like the Candy Crush game on your phone, like they have all these lands with these crazy characters. That's basically the characters you created for Candyland.
Now, if only I designed that.
Right. You would be raking it in on that one.
So in the process of that, Mattel heard about us, and they asked us to consult with them on it. So we were consulting with them on a number of things. Plus, I had sold them a new concept that never got to see the light of day because the president of the company who was behind it had a heart attack and died in the middle of his term. But we created a concept called the Peanut Butter Papers. The Peanut Butter Papers was actually a really cool idea where in the land where all of the stories of all of the world are kept, a bad guy, the Duru, the evil 3-year Duru, has decided to decimate the stories of the world. To get the stories of the world in safe places, they hide them in these highly decorative peanut butter jars, and they call them, and they ship them out of there into stores around the world so that kids can keep the books. There's the little mini books that are in these jars, and of course with them come the characters, the storytellers, and everyone else. And we were far along on that, and then he died. But anyway, we got to know Mattel, so Mattel had us stay on. They wanted us to continue to consult, and we created things like She-Ra's the Crystal Castle for She-Ra. That was us. They wanted a castle for She-Ra, so we came up with that. So in the middle, that was kind of over there on the side, though.
Right.
So, but it's part of the tale because now I hear Ed Pressman was looking for a director for He-Man. So I arranged to meet him and through CAA, and so he goes, well, first-time director, it might be tough, and blah, blah, blah. What makes you think you can direct? I said, well, I'm really a director. I've directed productions of Jesus Christ Superstar and Godspell. I came from the theater. I'm a writer. I understand how to tell a story. And and by the way, I did the Conan show. I wrote, directed, and staged, produced the entire Conan show that's at Universal Studios right now.
Oh,
why don't you go look at that?
Yeah.
The Conan the Barbarian one?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
This is crazy.
Was that around the same time that the Arnold
with the real
film came out?
fire-breathing dragon, the dragon that actually breathes fire, not smoke, fire.
Wow. So was that did you create that around when Arnold's Conan the Barbarian came out, kind of to tie in with that?
Yeah, Universal. The movie had already been out, and I did two things with that thing that are kind of revolutionary. First of all, I convinced them not to try and do a scene from the movie. I said, I understand film and I understand theater, and trying to recreate things from the movies, that's not the way to do it, because you're never ever going to be as good as the movie. The movie has close-ups and tracking shots, and theater's a different medium. So let me take the Conan story. And again, I'd read all of the Conan books plus all the Marvel, the Roy Thomas, John Buscema, Barry Windsor Smith things. I knew Conan inside and out.
Right.
So I said, let's create a show specifically, for that theater. By the way, the theater already existed because that show came about because he had tried to do a show based on Dracula and all the monsters, and it was a huge disaster. And that's a tale for another time.
Okay.
But I met Jay Stein because they were looking to replace that with something, and one of the ideas was Conan. So I came back and I got engaged, to do a concept for them. We developed the concept and presented it, and they liked it, and had to go up to Sid Sheinberg, and they liked it, and we got commissioned then to go ahead and basically write it, design it, make it happen. We did that whole show in 9 months from start to finish. Which, if you ever see video of the show, it was an incredible Herculean task.
Wow.
But Ed Pressman went to see the show with David Odell. They came back and said, we get it. Okay, you're a director. You wrote, directed, and you designed it too. I said, well, yeah, I like a director. I mean, I didn't do all the drawings. I have artists that work for my company that do the designs, but with me, yes. So basically, yes, I did the show.
Right.
So they said, okay, we're going to sign you on as director. Everything is great. That's how I got signed up. Oh, so this is the Mattel connection. So he says, look, I think you're great, but I have one thing. Mattel has approval over 3 elements. the star, the script, and the director. And I'll have to take it to Mattel. I don't know how they'll react. And I said, I think they'll be fine. He goes, why? I said, well, what they're going to be concerned with is you have a director who understands the brand He-Man and that won't mess it up. And I'm already working for them as a consultant. They'll know that I understand the brand, and I think they'll be fine, which they were. And so that's really how it happened. It was just the right place at the right time, you know.
Yeah, and He-Man, Conan, kind of.
At that time, it was a $17 million movie. And just to give your listeners an idea of what the big fantasy movies were being produced for then, I think it was the second Star Wars movie then. I think it was $48 million, I think. Either 43 or $48 million was the budget for that. So 40 million-ish was the range for other like big fantasy pictures, and we had 17. Right. That's why they had come up with, again, the concept was already there, was fish out of water story. It was He-Man on Earth, basically.
Not creating a whole Eternia thing like the whole movie. It just placed it in
the script
suburbia.
That I read. Yeah, in the script that I read, the only Eternian piece is at the very end, and it's a small tag at the very end to do this thing where they discover a scrap of an American flag with a astronaut thing to kind of suddenly say, oh, Eternia came from Earth, I guess, because astronauts were here at one time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh,
that was the original script, and that was the only Eternian part. I really, once I signed on, I said, look, we got to give this an epic feeling, even though we have a limited budget, and I understand we have to keep it on Earth, but let's bookend it with Eternia. Let's start big. Let's jettison to Earth, and let's let them try and figure out what they have to do from there. And so a lot of the things that I think as kids, you remember the Air Centurions transforming into a god, all that stuff with her and the Ring of Truth with Kevin, and the entire opening of the throne room and the imprisonment of the goddess and the opening of the cosmic eye. That's all me. That was me.
What?
Yeah, that was me saying, we have to make this more. The movie originally opened with a knock on the door or pounding on the door, and Courtney answers it. In the script, I'm saying not Courtney, her character.
Right.
And a tired, beat up, bedraggled He-Man falls in the door, collapses from exhaustion, and she brings him back to health, and the story goes on from there. Oh. That's how the script that I read opened.
Not terrible, but that really wouldn't work. Yeah, that's not.
You're missing a lot. You're missing a lot.
Yeah. It's like cutting corners. So, okay.
So what I did was I convinced them that I could do it in a way that wouldn't kill the budget. And what I eventually wound up with was the big throne room, which now when I tell you this, you'll see. I sold them on building a giant throne room, which would cost a lot of money. However, I said, look, we're going to spend about the first 10 minutes of the movie in this throne room, and we're going to spend the last 20 minutes in the throne room. So 30 minutes of our film will be in this throne room. And I said, that's got to be a fair trade-off in a controlled environment instead of out on a bunch of other sets or a bunch of other locations or a bunch of other stuff trying to do this. We'll be on a control set. We'll be able to make this happen, and we'll give an epic beginning and end to this through this epic, huge throne room that represents Eternia. That's how I got them to build that set. And that set, I don't know if you've heard, but the way we did that was
two different.
We opened the doors up between two different sound stages. We opened the big doors up, and we built the set through two sound stages to get that sweep.
Wow.
And part of the reason for that was we were going to have a massive sword battle at the end between Skeletor and He-Man.
Right.
But by that time, the picture, they were shutting us down, and there was a whole other thing. But we did get the opening shot, which I wanted, from the doors, him following his feet, following him from the back, following him all up the thing, revealing the room, and then bang, he flips and turns into the camera, and we reveal Skeletor.
Right. Is it true that that's was the biggest set ever created for a film, at the time, or even at all?
Not ever created, but the biggest set created probably since the heyday of the movie studios. Yes, Blake Edwards,
Cleopatra and all that, since that time period.
Yeah. Blake Edwards was he had a cottage there on the Culver City lot, and when we were finishing the set, we're probably about 70% done or 80% done. It was pretty much the thing, and the doors at the far end were still open to let air in. Oh, that's what it was. We were done, and they opened the doors at the far end because they put in the sheen, they put the varnish to make it look like marble, and they were letting the air, come in and so that it would dry faster. And Blake Edwards was walking to his little cottage out there where he had his main office, and he leaned in, and he goes, "What the hell is this?" And I was a set masters, he goes, I haven't seen a set like this since I don't even remember 20 years ago, 30 years. No one builds sets like these anymore.
That's great. That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So in the filming, so that changed from the script. Were there other what would you say from like when you first came on to what you actually ended up filming? Was it pretty much a completely different script, or was it just that beginning and end was different, or was that kind of?
I would say that the fundamental fish out of water story stayed. Some of the scenes stayed, but the fundamental spine of the whole thing of the cosmic eye opening on the universe and freeing the sorceress and creating a metaphor for what is the master of the universe, the man who possesses the sword, the man who possesses this, and all the powers of the universe. That was all added later. All the and the air centurions and the big battleship. That was all me. That was me trying to bring what always intrigued me about Masters of the Universe. It was combining sword and sorcery with high tech. It was swords and blasters and
sci-fi.
And swords and little vehicles and stuff so I wanted to I love that I love that battle cart when he comes on the battle wagon that's floating down there. That's kind of almost gothic, but yet high tech and everything. And I love the Air Centurions and I think the whole the battle, the whole thing to prevent him from becoming the god, and then that whole scene, it actually I thought worked pretty well, and it did bring a sense of epic scope to the picture, especially if you're a kid. I mean,
oh yeah,
I just kept thinking, if I was a kid, I don't want to see a movie about He-Man walking around Earth,
right?
Right. And plus, I argued to the producers, look, you can't bring these characters like Beastman, all these guys, to walk around neighborhoods in the broad daylight. This is going to happen at night.
Right.
We have to have lighting. So
right.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Neil, like I said, Neil is the biggest Masters of the Universe fan in the world. So recently we actually did a screening with a bunch of friends. We got Masters of the Universe t-shirts together. We got these things the poster screen. I'm wearing it right now, actually, wearing my Masters of the Universe shirt. Yeah. And so we geeked out. We had all these people who watched it and had never seen the movie. I mean, we're talking about 30 years. This is 2017, so we're at the 30th anniversary of the film. Yeah. And they'd never seen it. And they were like, it's actually a good film.
Yeah,
like,
they enjoyed
holds
it.
up.
Yeah.
It actually does hold up, which is not something you could say for a lot of the bigger spectacle type films from the 80s. Like some of the stuff feels dated and so on. I think it holds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. It's amazing. In the last 3 or 4 years, it's had like a resurgence online and stuff. It's been interesting.
Yeah,
and
it was
Frank
all us.
Is finally, Frank Langella is finally getting his due for for a great performance, right? And I really wanted Frank very badly to do this, and he did it. And I had the studio saying, "Why are you going to pay him all this money? Just have him do a voiceover. It's going to be in a mask." I said, "No, you don't understand. It's got to be someone who can act through the mask. It's got to be someone to feel his." I said, I had to explain to Menahem, it's the way he walks, it's the way he holds himself, it's the stature. It is not just the lines; it's the whole thing.
Right.
Thank God he finally bought into it.
He's incredible. We have to talk about Frank Langella.
Yeah,
This guy's incredible.
Frank Langella is
every Christmas and birthday for Neil, I always have to figure out a Masters of the Universe gift to get him. So I actually got him a poster of Masters of the Universe signed by Frank Langella. Yeah, I got him. Actually found an original shooting script from the film that we got our hands on. I got him that for his for Christmas. But Frank Langella, Neil always he should have won an Oscar for that.
I
film.
feel like he should have won an Oscar. Like his performance is incredible, and he's some of the most memorable lines from my childhood. Even now, when we rewatch the film, it's he's quoting Shakespeare. It's it's unusual to find in a film that most people think is geared towards a children's film. Yeah, but it's riddled with all these incredible lines.
Yeah.
That was again when I met Frank. I said, Frank, I'm going to give you the script to read, but your role's not going to be like this when I'm done. And because it was when the script he read, if you ever read the first draft, it's get him, kill him, stop them.
Like the cartoon Skeletor. Really?
Yeah, and I wanted to get him away from that cartoony thing into let's just say a Jack Kirby kind of villain, a noble villain, and part of the thing was he said, "Well, will I be able to contribute?" I said, "Absolutely, we'll develop him together." And so we were both finding snippets of everything from Shakespeare to Molière to Marshall McLuhan, and what we did was we started to work on the character and on things he might say in particular scenes. And I would have never got that script approved. So the way we did it is we kind of agreed generally on an approach to things with each of these scenes, and then 1 or 2 nights before each of the scene we're going to shoot, I would go off and take some of his ideas and mine. I'd rewrite the scene.
Oh wow.
Well, because it's too late for them then to approve it. You know, these are. You know, you technically sign off on a signed script that the studio signs off on,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to make that. But as a director, and usually with a writer on the set, but none of the writers. That was the other thing. They gave me writers who didn't really like the material. You know, so you know, they thought it was they were. Either way, it was a toy line, but I kept saying, well, we're trying to make it more than a toy line, so try and, you know, get above that. But so we pieced it together, and it turned out pretty good. And that entire monologue at the end, I wrote for Frank. I wrote that monologue of you know, now I have. This is so good, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel it.
That's amazing.
I love it. I love that scene. Yeah.
So at the end of the film, I know like the story is it was kind of being shut down early. I mean, this was just canon and they're crazy. It was just, they were nuts. If you ever watched the documentary Electric Boogaloo, the wild untold stories of canon films, which Gary, you're in it. Yeah. You talk about in the Master Universe segment. It was nuts. Like Canon Films was making like 30, 40 films a year and they were just going balls to the wall. It's crazy. It's really fascinating story, but Master Universe is just one of those ones where it's like, oh, we're out of money. Okay, like let's end it early. Or I don't know exactly how it ended up ending, but you were like, from what I've heard, you were like champion saying like, no, we're finishing this film. I don't care how we do it. We're going to get everybody last day. Like, it's like the daylight's breaking and you're just like, get everybody together. We're going to rewrite this thing. We're going to get it done. This is like how it gets built up in my head. And
well, there was a lot of that every day because there was this threat looming over us that the thing was going to get shut down anyway because Canon was going bankrupt. And there were 3 times during the course of the show that payroll didn't show up for the crew. Oh. You can imagine how that goes with the Teamsters and everybody.
Nope.
And I was able to talk them into doing the day. You know, they were waiting for me in the morning. And the first time I go, "What's up, guys?" "Well, we're doing our pay." And blah, blah, blah. I said, "Okay, all right, that's bad. Yeah, that's bad." I had Elliot Schick there. I said, "Elliot, how about this? How about, guys, we're here for the day. Let's not lose the day. Let's work. I mean, if at the end of the day there's no money, I guess we'll be shut down today anyway. But Elliot will go to the studio and Elliot will go get the money and we'll keep going. And let's not lose the day." And you know, they were cool. They said, "You're right. We're here. Let's do the day." And you know, and Elliot, I didn't know then because no one wanted to be bothering me with the details. But of course, it makes sense. I now know from what Bill Stout knew and said in one of these interviews somewhere. Elliot was going to Mattel. Canon didn't have the money.
Right.
He went to Mattel,
Wow.
and Mattel said, "Oh shit!" They would write the check to meet that payroll for that week, and so
because Canon was supposed to go 50-50 with them, I believe, and then they just didn't pony up on one half of the.
Yeah.
So Mattel ended up fully funding it.
I think they wound up, if not fully funded, pretty close to.
Right.
But
that was Canon biting off more than they could chew at that time.
There were some challenging times there, but at the end, what happened was they told me, in fairness, they said, "You're done tonight. You're done." And at midnight we shut you down, and these were night shoots. Okay. I was like, I have all this stuff to shoot. What are you kidding? So on the spot. Yeah, it was actually, they told me the day before. So I remembered vaguely. I'm going to give away a trade secret. I remembered vaguely this kind of fight scene from the Kurt Russell picture in Chinatown.
Oh, Big Trouble in Little China.
Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
So I went and got, I don't know what back in those days, a videotape or a laser disc, whatever there was back then. And I found it, and I saw what they were doing. It was backlit, and I said, okay. So I called the DP, and I said, tomorrow night we need to have smoke. We need to have color wheels. Color wheel to do things. I described him. I said, go get the video. Go look at the scene from Big Trouble in Little China, because here's. And then on the set, I went to the guy from Boss Films, who was in charge of the plate shots, and he was scheduled to do one plate shot. Those plate shots were one of our big problems. Every one of them took 2 to 4 hours to set up.
Those are a pain.
Because they had their 65 millimeter cameras, and they had to rock mount them so there's no vibrations and stuff. And he was scheduled to do one shot, I think, that night. And I said, I need you to do one more shot for me. And here's what I'm going to do. I want you to frame up you know the shot. I want you to frame up the throne room. I'm going to have Skeletor and He-Man. They're going to blast their swords, the staff and sword, bang, form a cross. And at that moment, I'm going to kill all the power. I'm just going to pull all the power out of the thing. And the room's going to go dark. and I need this to transition me into this surreal world, because if they shut me down tonight at midnight, I'm going to keep the stuntman on I'm going to keep on. Blade was doubling as I'm going to keep him on, and He-Man, and we're going to do these color wheel shots with everyone else gone, and we're going to grab this stuff. We're going to put a battle together, and we still don't have the ending, but I'm going to come back and get that later. But we need to have a sword fight, and this is all we got. And he goes, well, I'm not supposed to do any of these shots, but I'll do this for you, Gary. And I said, thank you. So we did it. We got that shot, and then we did some more shooting. And at midnight, Elliot Schick put a clipboard in front of the camera. I mean, right in the middle of a scene. What? And at midnight said, we're done. And everything stopped. And then I said, Elliot, I need to shoot this other stuff with just them, and I don't care. Clear the set, do whatever the hell you want, but I need to get these color wheel shots, and I need this so the editors can edit together a fight here. And so he looked the other way for that. We kept a skeleton crew, and the fewest people we needed, kind of like a gaffer and a DP, and we had a handheld camera. I made sure we had a handheld camera that day. And we basically did these random shots. We just did all these shots. I said, just keep the color wheel out, keep them backlit, keep them, and Blade would choreograph a few pieces. We'd shoot that, a few pieces more, move the color wheel around. And we just got all this footage. And I told Ann Coates, the editor, I said, Ann, you got to cut this into a scene. It's got to be a battle. Okay. And it's got to end up here, because at this point, we're going to hopefully shoot the rest of it, and that staff's going to snap, and we're going to go into this ending. I mean, all that was done under intense pressure. It really tests your creativity. It's like
that's crazy.
You are literally like, I'm just sitting here with the biggest grin on my face right now. I'm like, this is just bananas. So like Master Universe, obviously you were the director, so the movie wouldn't have happened without you, but it truly would not have happened if you hadn't gotten that end. Like, how would you even piece together a movie at that point without a climactic scene?
No, well, remember, it would have been made, but it would have been a very different movie. It would have been, it really would have been He-Man and a couple other characters running around Earth, and as written, by the way. And as written during the daytime, it would have been one of those really funky,
hokey canon films from the 80s.
Yeah.
They had a few that were pretty bad, and they had a couple gems in there, but other ones, not so much.
I just love the attitude of it's gotta happen. It's like, I'm not taking no for an answer. Right. We are going to make this happen.
Cowboy style.
Yeah.
It was sometimes sheer force of will, I think. I think it's true. I mean, I knew what was riding on this, and we had to get it done. And there's an interesting story. I started this film, which was probably the biggest film for a first-time director ever, at $17 million. And there was another film being done by Charlie Mathau's son called Doing Time on Planet Earth, also for Canon, his first movie. That was I think like a $1 million movie or $2 million. But there was another movie being done by a guy that I'd met called Miracle Mile. No, he had done Miracle Mile, and this was going to be his next movie. I can't remember the Steve somebody. And then there was another movie being done by Rusty Lemerand, who I think had done Mannequin. And he had told them he could do a whole, God, was it War of the Worlds? No, what was it? What was he making? Oh, Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Okay, right.
He was going to take.
Wow. That's right. They never finished that. That was in the documentary. That's right.
Yeah, he was going to take Journey to the Center of the Earth and use all the sets they had built for Invader from Mars, I believe. And he convinced Cannon he could do this epic movie for $6 million. So all of us started at roughly the same time. All of us had delivery dates to meet for that for that summer or that fall. And at the end of the day, I had the biggest, most complex movie, and we met our date. And the other guys did not. And I'm only aware of it because you're aware of those things when you're doing things, of who's doing what, in your kind of sphere of filmmaking. And I don't mean that as a negative, because every movie is a challenge.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting that this was the biggest one with the most complex stuff, with special effects and contact lenses and creature makeup, and I mean, you name it, it's in here. Even animals. Okay, only the cow, but still,
Cow. That's right.
I remember that.
But a textbook for every single challenge you could face on a movie.
Right.
Because you understand, guys. You know enough to know, right? With contact lenses and facial appliances, you have to allow X amount of hours. They chew up hours getting the makeup on.
Every
now
day.
You only have X hours left to get your shots.
Yeah.
Contact lenses, I don't think anymore, but back then they could only have them in for 20 minutes.
Wow.
So you had to rehearse the scene, set it up, get it lit, get everything right, and then say, lenses in, and now you got 20 minutes to get what you need.
That's
that is crazy.
Right. Well, at least Meg Foster didn't have to wear contacts. She just had awesome eyes, anyways. So, yeah, like you would think that's contact lenses, and you find out, nope, those are her eyes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So, of course, I was a huge fan of the animation,
the cartoon.
So the thing that saddened me about the movie was the fact that Orko did not make it on there. The floating guy from the cartoon.
Yeah.
And I was wondering who had to make the decision to cut Orko.
Well, that was me basically, because I argued, Mattel had the same thing with Battle Cat.
Yeah.
This is a live action movie, guys. I said, and this is before digital. Now today there'd be no problem with that. Back in those days, you would have had two options for Orko. You would have had to have a guy on wires, which we didn't have the budget or schedule or time to do. Plus, it would look pretty phony.
Hokey, yeah.
Or you would have had to do Harryhausen stop motion, and even that would have been problematic.
It'd just be jerky, yeah.
We would have had to. In those days, we would have had to green screen every single thing.
Yeah.
Remember, the days of moving cameras in shots like that didn't really exist yet.
Right.
They really perfected that with Roger Rabbit. That's where they really.
Oh yeah, very true. Yeah,
Bob Zemeckis. Yeah. Well, you created the character of Gwildor to kind of replace him. Did you create that character, or who actually came up?
Yeah, I created Blade and Gwildor and Sorod. All those extra characters. They're Karg. Created Karg.
Right. You're a god, right? Yeah. I want to make sure if anybody's never told you that, I want to let you know right now you're a god. You're a master of the universe.
Billy Barty.
Billy Barty.
Yeah,
he's great in that. I loved him in Willow as well.
Yeah.
I always remember Willow, Master Universe.
Yeah, he did a great
Billy
job.
Billy was a real trooper. You could tell he was a pro. He was definitely the oldest guy on the movie. He had all that makeup to get in the morning, did it, and never complained. Never. Just a real trooper.
That's awesome.
And a great man. That guy had a million jokes. That guy could tell the funniest jokes. Some of them are not for mixed company, but they're funny.
That's great. And this was Courtney Cox's first film.
Yeah.
Which is another crazy tidbit.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you just got her casting call. Just threw that out there.
The casting director brought her in. This is this was how she was billed, I guess. This is the girl from the Dancing in the Dark video.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yes.
Oh, yeah.
So it is a funny story because I met her the first time, and I what I was looking for was a real, just kind of Midwestern, down to earth girl that people could look at and feel empathy for, and also she could be strong when she needed to be, and. So the casting director, she said, Vicki Thomas said, I want you to see this girl. And I've been in a lot of girls. And she comes in, and she came in, as most actresses do, with makeup and with her hair done and dressed very sexy and contemporary and chic. And she was great, very personable. We got along. We talked for about 10 or 15, 20 minutes, and she read a little bit, and I said, "That's really good." But when she left, I said, "That's not the girl. She's a little too sexy, a little too this, a little too that. I want someone who's more." And she goes,
"Girl next door."
Yeah, let me bring her in tomorrow. Let me bring her in one more time because I really think it's her. So I have to hand this to Vicki. So she called her and said, "No makeup, just come in jeans, come in whatever you would get. Don't dress up. Don't." Exactly what you said. He wants the girl next door.
Right.
She came in the next day like that instead of like a sexy bombshell, and she was both, by the way. She's very sexy.
Yeah.
But she came in the next day as the girl next door, and we talked for 20 or 30 minutes, and she left, and I said, "Okay, you're right. That's her." Cast her.
Oh wow,
that's awesome.
That's
you
awesome.
Gave her first real big break. I mean, it was Dance in the Dark video, but in terms of
then I was with CIA, remember, and I introduced her to CIA. Halfway through the movie, I said, "You guys should really take a look at this girl. She's really good."
Wow.
Introduced her to CIA. They signed her, and then within, I don't know, 3 months after Masters, she was the girlfriend of Michael J. Fox on
Family Ties.
Yep, Family Ties, and then of course after that she went into Friends. So
Friends, 7 years later, Friends. It's crazy, yeah. Like it's weird to think of chain reactions. I always think of these things; they kind of blow my mind. Like if you hadn't cast her for Master Universe, Vicki hadn't brought her back the next day and done that, would she ever have gotten Friends later on? Like you never know, and then, like how that would have worked out.
The sorceress, Christina Pickles, ended up
being her
playing
mom
her mother
Friends.
on Friends.
Yep,
which I thought was funny.
Yeah,
that is so awesome.
And Dolph Lundgren, you said, was already cast when you were brought on.
Right.
And I know there was a thing about he was supposed to have his voice possibly dubbed over because he was, I think, Swedish, I believe.
Swedish, yeah.
So a thick accent. Obviously, Rocky
I had
IV.
a perfect guy. I found a guy that was a perfect voiceover guy. I don't think anyone would have noticed because the guy had just a little bit of he put on just a little bit of an accent. And,
so not like Arnold lost Hercules lost to New York Arnold. It wouldn't have been like that bad. Like that is absolutely not.
Yeah, but the guy going, hello.
Yes, father,
hooray."
father, I'm going to the. Come on. Okay, so you would have gotten a great. You had a guy already picked out and everything for the voiceover, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we already tested. We went in the studio and applied his voice and played it for Menahem at the studio and for Ed Pressman.
Right.
And Menahem said, "I'll never forget. We paid for Dolph Lundgren. We want Dolph Lundgren." Okay.
Yeah, because he was already had done Rocky IV, right? As Avon Drago.
Yeah.
So he's
you
kind of
remember
known.
in Drago, right?
Yeah.
He has one line in that movie.
He's got one line.
Break you.
I will break you. If he dies, he dies. He does that, but it's Russian. It's a Russian accent. But I heard, you don't have to confirm this or whatever. I heard Sylvester Stallone came by the set of Master Universe. It was like, you gave that guy lines? I heard that happen.
Well,
but...
someone told me that story too many years later, but I never heard it at the time, and I didn't see Arnold the day he came on the set. But that wouldn't be abnormal because I was all over the place. So.
Right. Okay. But I mean, Dolph Lundgren, his acting improved over the years, and he's gotten great. But I will tell you one thing: he wore those, I don't know, Speedo kind of thing throughout the whole movie with confidence. He literally, there's no sort of self-conscious. He's just got like the sculpted body.
This is the funny thing, because Mattel had approval over the costume design. Anything to do with He-Man and the principal characters, they had approvals over the costumes and everything else. We must have done 30, 40, 50 drawing sketches of things to get their approval because they originally said, no, we want him just like the toy. And so I had the guys do a sketch of him just like the toy. I said, you really want, this is a live action movie. You want a guy running around like this because he's basically a big naked guy with a little loincloth on.
Right.
And they go, well, you can't change it very much. And so then we started trying different things. And I think the big breakthrough was the cape because we added the shoulder pads and the cape, and we brought the boots up to the knees. We gave him a nice these cross straps for the cape and the belt. And so at least when you meet him, he doesn't look like he's a guy running around from a wrestler. More sense. Yeah, a wrestler from a wrestling match running around town,
Right. That's funny.
But even that was a battle. They weren't as tough as on Tila and the rest of the guys, but on He-Man they were just unbelievable.
I'm just glad you guys changed his hairstyle and you didn't keep the hairstyle of the cartoons, with the bangs, and that would have just looked ridiculous. The Prince Adam haircut.
Oh wow, that would have been.
Yeah, that was a good call. Whoever thought of do more of a mullet style thing. That was
it works.
Smart.
It works.
Yeah, it works.
Well, I was just curious, what was it like working with James Tolkien? Because I always remember him from Back to the Future,
Top Gun,
Problem
Child,
Lubick,
solid professional, always hit his marks, always on, always took direction. I think he was a total professional.
Yeah, I love that line or the scene at the end when they transport to Grayskull, and then Lubick turns around and he's it's like the only time there's a curse word I think in the whole film is where he's like, oh shit, and then he ducks, and then they're like, stay down, and then he's getting shot and he jumps up and he's like, nobody takes pot shots at Lubick. I love that scene. That's one of my favorite scenes.
It is a great scene.
Yeah.
With the brick wall or whatever.
The car, half the car is there, and there's like half the building. Like it's amazing.
Yeah. Amazing. I get excited just talking about the film. Like I want to watch it again right now.
Yeah,
that's right. Okay, so that came. All right, so let's move forward a little bit. Now, I heard there was a Masters Universe 2 planned like right afterwards. They'd already cast it. I guess they were going to replace Dolph Lundgren. Were you involved in that at all?
No, I moved on, and because I had said if you're going to do number 2, the only thing to do is take it to Eternia, because this gag isn't going to work twice. I said you can't bring him back to Earth again. It's going to be same old.
Right.
So if you're going to do a sequel, the only one I would do is go to Eternia. And I was telling him, if the movie's successful, Eternia has to. I was referencing Lord of the Rings, and I was referencing the Lost World of Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I said, we have to go up there and feel this is a world. And again, that's not what they wanted to hear then, because this was still pre-digital, the idea of creating an entire, but if they ever make this sequel, they're going to do it on Eternia. And now with today's technology, you can do it.
Yeah, because they're talking about rebooting or like remaking the film.
Yeah.
They're finally talking
about
that.
By the way, it was going to be McG And Mick G had this great quote because someone had asked him when he was going to direct it. They said, "Well, what do you think of the original?" He goes, "Well, actually, I think it's great. It has a lot of fans, and I like it. And I thought it was well done, and blah blah blah." He was very complimentary. And they said, "What about Skeletor?" And he said, "Oh, well, he commented on Frank's performance. He said, look, there's only 3 great screen villains. This is Mick G." Mm-hmm. He says, Darth Vader, Gruber, and Skeletor.
I would say the same thing. That's amazing. It's true. Right.
It's true.
He's so good in that. He really is fantastic. I think he elevates that film to a whole new level.
Well, that was the whole idea. You have to understand, no offense to Dolph, but I knew I need someone to carry the picture in terms of an actor. And it's not news to make your antagonist the real spine of a movie. True. Because it's always the antagonist that's driving it. The hero has to ultimately overcome. But I wanted someone who could really drive it, and I knew I was going to make Skeletor the spine of the movie, which I did.
Right.
My other idea, my more recent idea for the sequel is to call it Masters of the Universe and subtitle it I, Skeletor.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Are you, if you don't mind me asking, are you involved as a consultant or anything in the?
No, not at all.
Don't think.
With Mick, if Mick G had done it the way he felt about the film, I might have been. It could have worked, and I've met him before. So, but
it's
right now,
fail then.
I don't know what the status is right now at this thing. It's had so many scripts and so many directors.
I know. It keeps getting new announcement. Oh, it's this person's attached, this person's attached. It doesn't seem to... Yeah,
we have a new titler.
Yeah. But the original one I heard they ended up using, instead of doing... they were supposed to be Masters of the Universe 2 Cyborg. They ended up using all the sets and everything for the Cyborg movie with Van Damme.
Yeah, something like that. They went to their go-to director back then. What's his name?
Davidson?
No, it's not another guy that did a lot of their films, and he was used to the way they worked, and he was going to take the remnants. But I don't think there were many sets built or anything, honestly. I think, but anyway, yeah, he wrote that in a weekend. I think Cyborg.
I actually love that film. Yeah, it was crazy to find out that was basically not really a sequel, but it had been created almost out of the idea, or the sets at least, of the Master Universe. And I think they were doing were there any other canon films after that point that you were involved in, like the Spider-Man film they were talking about doing, or anything?
Yes, well, actually they almost did a feature of Captain Power. We were selling Captain Power, the television show, and he wanted to do that. And at one point he talked about we were talking about Spider-Man, Captain Power, and one other movie. I can't remember what that was now. But I didn't want to license him to do Captain Power because I already knew what state they were in. I knew that they were on the verge of collapse.
Yeah, and they broke up like 2 years later, and Goban and Globus.
Yeah.
I'm like a huge fan of the score of that film, and one of the elements that always struck me in Masters of the Universe is the cosmic key and the theme that plays throughout the film when they open the portal to go between Eternia and Earth and all that. I just love the whole music aspect of the film where, they're in the music store and they're playing Jimi Hendrix and, Kevin's in a band and he's like plays the keyboard and it ties into the end when he plays the keyboard with the key and he remembers a tune. And I love that whole musical aspect of the film. Was that something that was in the original script, or is that something you brought to the script, how did Bill Conti get involved in all that?
Was the basic idea was in the original script, if I remember it correctly. I think the idea, if I remember correct, I think the cosmic key as a device, for getting through things, was mentioned in there. I don't think it was ever visualized.
Okay.
And that idea of Kevin playing a key at the end somehow worked into it. Mm-hmm. Because I had a band in high school and everything. I built it. In fact, the name of the band at the high school dance, The Illusions, that was my band.
What? Great. That's cool.
I just took the name from when I had a band back in junior high and high school, I think.
Right.
And but the idea of the cosmic key, and then the line that again, I added this line because this was the line I wanted all of you young kids to grasp. It's when he says, "I can't do this. I'm just a high school rock and roll." And the camera moves in on Goddard and he says, "Only one of you, Kevin. Only one of you in all the universe."
Oh. So Neil quotes that all the time.
That's the message. Yeah. That's the message of the movie buried in there that I would hope would reach kids, to let them know, there's only one of you, So and that's based very loosely on a quote by, it was originally Martha Graham, actually. Who basically said, look, she's got this famous quote, "You're an artist and your only duty is to express yourself in life." And it goes on and on. It's very artfully written. And what it basically says is, There's only one of you. No one else is going to express the creative things you do in your way. You're the only one. It's you. And I've always remembered that, you know. So as a creative person, you have whatever you have that makes you you, that makes your things you, and it's unique to you, and no one else will ever be that. So that was the idea with that, and apparently it worked, because a lot of people that have wrote me emails over the years have cited that often.
Right. Yeah.
So
it always stuck in my head. Yeah, that one line.
Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's great. Did you get Bill Conti? Because he also did Rocky, right? The Rocky theme and everything.
The music is incredible.
Yeah. Was that like
we had a list of 5 or 6 composers that wanted to do it, and all of them were pretty good. Bill wanted to do it, and I basically had a meeting with Bill and said, you know, you do these big movies like Rocky and stuff. Are you sure you want to do this? I mean, you're going to be able to come at the time? He goes, hey, I only get offered movies like Rocky now. I've been typecast as that guy. I don't get to do the John Williams scores. I want to do one of those.
That's awesome.
Okay, that's good. Let's do it then.
You got it. That's great.
That is great, because it is very, you know, it's reminiscent of like the Star Wars, you know, this massive fanfare. Like it just has an incredible sound to it, and it's unique to it. Like I hear that score and I'm like, Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so moving forward, you had the Captain Powers show,
right?
Which that was a little bit before my time in terms of watching TV or anything like that, and everything like that. But was there some sort of interactive element with that, with the toys and?
Yeah, that came through Mattel. I brought them an idea for my innovation was, this is a concept called Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, is combining, you know, military and future. And there's going to be 2 things. It's going to be the first live action show for kids again, because when I was a kid, there were a lot of shows that were live action. There was Fury and all kinds of shows, and Sky King, tons of them. And everything's animation now. Let's bring out live action. But we're going to be the first show to put CGI robotic villains fighting the live action guys, and that was a push for those days. And they were watching it, and they started bringing in more and more guys. And finally at the end, they said, can you come back tomorrow? Because we've got a technology here that's been kind of looking for a project, and this might be it. So I came back the next day, and they demonstrated this technology that they could do from a television screen at home. And they said, can you incorporate this into the show? And if you can, we might do it. And I said, yeah, I think we can figure out a way. I said, I don't want to compromise the show or the stories or anything else, but I think we can find a way. I said, look, I'm not going to do it if it's like, hi, kids, go get your, power guns, go get your power jets, and it's time for the interactive. I said, what I want to do is a show where if adults are watching the show, they have no idea that there's this extra element. But kids that know, it can say on the boxes, your jet will interact with the thing. Kids that will know they can interact with their jets. But someone could watch the show, and if they didn't have a jet, never know that they missed anything. Right. That was our whole approach to it, that it should work on both levels. It kind of did. So I was pretty happy with it.
That's great. And then moving forward, so then I know that like you said, you got back with your company to kind of bring it to, bring it forward. And you just started banging out hit rides. I know, like
we just rode.
Oh, we were just at Orlando, Universal Orlando, and we did Jurassic Park's one of my favorite ones. I love that. Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, 3D, Battle Across Time, Spider-Man. Spider-Man's one of my favorites. It's like in the Poseidon's Fury. I did
the redo of Poseidon's Fury, so I don't know which one you saw, but the first one they opened, which usually had young college-age guys playing an 80-year-old wizard that would come down the stairs with not very good jokes and things. Yeah. So I didn't do that one. I came back in and made it a young.
The one I saw is one with the mom from Friends. What's her name? Catherine Pickle.
Yeah,
that's the one we saw. Yeah, I think it's
so.
Great.
I redid that. They did the original attraction for $82 million, and it was a bomb. Oh. They gave me $2.1 million to try and fix it.
What?
So that's what I did.
You can do it, right?
Oh no, it's funny too, because I the whole time I had been on the ride for years. I went on back in like 2003, and my first time, and then Nick had never done it before. Yeah. And so the whole time I was like, all right, it's about to get crazy. It's about to get crazy. Just here it comes. Like, because you move from room to room.
And the water thing that goes over your head, the circle water thing that go through and everything.
It's pretty cool.
When it comes to these rides, all these different ones, were you like doing like the media segment of it? Like the videos, the short films that go along with them? Which part of those would you create? Like the whole concept?
Yeah, the entire thing. I would... create the concepts. For Poseidon, no, that one I had to create a new concept based upon their existing format and existing walkthrough, the 4 scenes, rewrite and do all those kind of things. But basically, Yeah, you guys probably never saw the Star Trek attraction in Las Vegas. That was pretty mind-bending. That one, if you ever talk to anyone who experienced it, when we beam you up to the starship.
Are you talking about the Cleon?
I did. Yeah, I did the when the
was Patrick Stewart in that one? Like, did you?
No. So
yeah,
it's Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, the one where you get beamed up when you're standing there thinking you're going to get on a little simulator.
The Cleon encounter.
You get beamed up to the deck. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we create the concept. When I say we, it's me and my company. But we create the concepts, then we script it, then we design it. We produce it. Generally, we do the software. On Spider-Man, they use a CG company, of course, to do all that. And on T2 3D, Digital Dimension did the work. I supervised the third act, the 3-screen parts, because that had to interact with the live actors.
That blows my mind. I love that part.
That had to all work with the live actors in the theater. So, but Jim really directed that second act.
Jim Cameron.
The second act of T2, where we're basically straight ahead filmmaking, right?
Right.
But that's what was great, because it was the first time a director like him. Spielberg consulted on a lot of the stuff like Jurassic Park and things like that over the years on a lot of things that we were doing. But I think Jim was the first one who really threw himself into it and said, let's make this cool.
Right.
And actually directed that film sequence while he was in pre-production on Titanic. So that was a big deal.
Yeah, that 3D in that, I've been telling people since I first saw that ride several years ago. I was like, that 3D in the Terminator 2 thing is the craziest 3D I've ever seen in my life. Like that T1
It's still the best, isn't it? I was
amazing.
reminded those tentacles come out and they like poke you in the eye. Man.
Yeah,
like
and they feel like
there.
they come through onto the live stage. I'm like, how is this happening? 'Cause I don't know if it's a 3-screen thing that's creating the effect, but I still don't know how 20 years, like that was created in 96, I think it was. How that was done. Like there's still 3D that comes out today that's funded by, with hundreds of millions of dollars thrown into a film that doesn't look that good. Doesn't even touch it. Yeah, it's bananas. And because we were at Universal and we were there for the last day because they just ended the run in Orlando.
Second to last show.
Yeah, we went to the second to last show, and I heard you said you were there for the last show.
Yeah.
So we just crossed paths.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
they
were letting people film it. People were cheering. It felt like this last hurrah for this great ride.
It was a packed house.
Yeah, 21 years.
Wow.
It was great.
I'm still at awe right now that we just talked about that you wrote the script for the Star Trek, the encounter, the Cleon encounter, and you literally wrote the script, because I'm a Trekkie. I'm just letting you know right up front. So you wrote the script for LaForge, Riker, and I'm not even gonna say his name from the show. I'm gonna say Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is crazy. Yeah. That is phenomenal for me. I literally still today, my wife makes fun of me because every night I cannot go to bed unless I have Star Trek Generations on in the background.
Next Generation.
I don't know what it is. I have it on in the background. So I'm watching Jean-Luc every night.
He
right now in my life.
A lullaby to put you to sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Diego, he's a huge Trekkie. That's great.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So
that was cool. There's another story to tell, but we almost built a full-size Starship Enterprise in Las Vegas prior to that other, like 3 years before the Star Trek experience. Downtown wanted to it was either us or that what they wound up with the what do they call it, the projection over the downtown area. We had but the president of Paramount at the time, buried his name in my memory. He killed it. It was all funded, was ready to go. We're going to build a full-size Starship Enterprise. And the president of Paramount had this moment where he's like, well, what if, when I do a bad movie, people forget about it. I take a few bad reviews and, this is a terrible movie and then it goes away. But what if you build this Starship Enterprise in Las Vegas and it's a white elephant and no one cares and no one goes, I'll be the guy responsible for that. So all he saw was the downside, not the upside, not that he would be creating another Mount Rushmore.
Right.
The guy was,
wow.
I can't say that he's an idiot because he made money over the years making movies.
But it was a bad
decision. A very good
decision.
studio head though, but still, that was a bad call,
Yeah.
I mean, how incredible would it have been to be able to walk through the Enterprise?
Yeah, and knowing you'd also created it. So okay, so those were the rides. I just want to jump forward. Are you have any projects you're working on right now that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, right now I acquired the rights to a young adult series of books called Escape from Furnace. They're 5 books by an English author. The first one's called Lockdown, Escape from Furnace. And we've been developing it for the last 2 years. And we're, well, I can't make the announcement yet I can say we have a director signed. CAA is working with us on packaging the film, and we're very close to having this financed. So I will not be directing it because I'm still running my company, but I will be producing this. It's a YA series, but unlike the other ones, it's a kind of an action adventure / horror element into it. So it's a little different than, it's not like Maze Runner, and it's not like Hunger Games. It's very unique and different, and I think could be a very cool now series of films. And so we're focused on that. And I think I'll know in the next 30 to 45 days whether this is greenlit, but I think it's going to be. So that's going to be our next big film project, I think.
That's exciting.
In terms of parks and things, we're working on a number of different projects now, several in Japan. One of them is for a group called Chimelong. Chimelong is the most successful Chinese owner-operated parks there. They have a thing called Ocean Kingdom, and it's very successful. So we're doing their next one. Called the Forest Kingdom. It's on a mountainside. It's gonna be pretty cool.
Wow.
So we're doing that now, and we're also doing. We have a joint venture with Cirque du Soleil to create Cirque du Soleil theme parks and resorts around the world.
Wow,
and,
that's crazy.
So we're working on the first couple there too. So we're staying very busy, and we have a show on Broadway right now. If any one of your listeners are in New York, it's actually off Broadway in Union Square at the Darrell Roth Theater. It's called In and of Itself. It's a magician who's been elected by his fellow musicians for 3 years running now as the best magician, greatest magician in the world. And it's a one-man show that he did. Frank Oz directed it. You know who Frank Oz is?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yoda.
So Frank Oz directed it. But when I say it's a magic show, it almost demeans it because it's a monologue dealing with identity and who we are really and the masks we create during our lives for various reasons, all personalized by the magician himself and telling his life story. And there are the illusions are weaved into this monologue, and it leads to a very cool climactic ending. And we've extended it now 4 times. We just extended it again through May of next year. It is selling out. It's got great reviews. You guys, anyone that is in the area can look it up. Again, it's called In and of Itself. And so we're doing that right now. We're producing that with Neil Patrick Harris and Tom Warner.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm checking it out. I'm a New Yorker, so I'm heading there. That's where I'm going to go. That's great. Well, thank you very much, Gary. This has been great. We'd love to have you back on at any point. So I'm sure there's so much more. You haven't slowed down. It's like you've got so much to talk about.
All right. Well, it's good talking to you guys, and I hope your listeners find this interesting. I'm happy to do it again at some point.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
So that was Gary Goddard. That was incredible.
That was
He
blew my mind.
Oh my god!
Blew your mind. Like my jaw's hurting because I have not closed it yet.
I'm gonna have to go.
Smiling.
I'm gonna have to go sit somewhere for like a week and like process this.
Ponder your
Did
life.
he really say that? Did he really say that?
It's crazy.
I need to go back and listen to this.
Well, it's crazy because you look at if you look at his IMDb and you'd be like, okay, these are the things he's done, but like how many things he's had his hands in or created? Like just creating characters for Candyland. Like what is going on here? He did this one over here. He did some stuff over there.
He changed my childhood.
I know.
Like my childhood was a lie. I didn't know that.
No, but like there's so much more we can talk to him about, and hopefully we can have him on again and just cover some more of these points. Yeah, that was great.
No,
that was great.
Yeah, that was awesome. So thank you guys for listening to us and Gary Goddard and talking about the films that he's made, the projects that he worked on, the rides that we rode. We thank you for joining us for this Get to the Podcast. That's Get to the Podcast with the number 2. My name is Diego De Souza.
I'm Nick Gambino.
And I'm Neil Carson.
I have the power. No, you guys don't have the power. I have the power.
I have the power.
I have the power.
No, I have the power.
All right, you have the power, then I'll have the power afterwards. Then we'll give it to Neil.
Well,
Yeah, you get the
What, I get sloppy? I get sloppy
second power. Sloppy third power.
You still here? It's over. Go home. Go.